What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to episode 97 of the Lombard Trucking Show. Good morning. Hope everyone's doing well out there. Got a lot of great immediate feedback from the previous episode talking with James Year. Very interesting conversation in that one. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that yet, definitely take some time. I know it's a long one, but when you start going down the rabbit holes of autonomous and all of what that has to offer, you can't stop. That's why, and we mentioned it's called the 500-pound gorilla in the room because that's the issue that we're dealing with. It's something that's in the room that nobody's really talking about, and it involves everybody. And there's a lot of people coming into the industry who might not see it. There's a lot of people who are in the industry rooting for it, who are not seeing possibly some of the implications. So definitely check it out. This episode got a phenomenal guest on here. Him and I linked up some months ago. We had a great conversation on the phone. He's a Kansas City man, and we're big Kansas City respecters at the Lombard Trucking Show. We love KC. We love the hospitality that city has to offer. This is a gentleman who comes with some storied experience in the logistics world. I admire what he's been doing. I admire what he's currently doing and what he's got coming up. So without any further delay, I want to bring him right onto the show. Mr. Nathaniel Ebel, what's up, man?
Good morning, Mike. How you doing, man?
I can't complain, man. I just got back from the gym. That's why I needed that wardrobe change before we got rolling.
Yeah, I can understand, man. Well, hey, listen, appreciate the shout out for Kansas City, born and raised. Really, all we've got is good barbecue and the Chiefs, so I can't brag too much on us, but those are our specialties. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was up there for the CDLLife.com summit, and that was my first time. Well, I've been to a Royals game before, and you have some storied history with the Royals. Yep. Not they won a championship not too long ago, but we went out to, I'm not sure what that area is called, where they have hot country nights. Where is?
Oh yeah, gosh,
it's where PBR is, and there's like a whole square up there.
Power and Light. Yeah, Power and Light District.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool setup. I'm not gonna lie. It was fun. It's a good time. Although I did hear a couple residents told me that Kansas City's the number one worst city for dating.
I can't speak to that. I wouldn't be surprised, but maybe that's one man's opinion. But I would not put it past that.
Yeah, that's just, I don't know. That's a stat somebody told me. It's some article said it online, but yeah, that's probably a story for a different day. But yeah, man. So let's I'd love to hear your story. So yeah, let's start from the top, man. You're born and raised KC. Walk us up from day one of when you were born to day now.
Well, appreciate it, man. Yeah, Kansas City guy, Midwest guy, born and raised in the area. Went to school in the area, played college football just an hour and a half north of where we live now. Really, myself, my family, my wife and her family been in the area from day one, so to say. But yeah, I got into the real estate industry for just a few years right out of school. Kind of shifted gears, and really since then, so almost for the last 15 years, have been in the freight and logistics world, a couple different capacities there. But yeah, just a Midwest guy, man. Midwest values, kind of the whole thing you'd expect. So
college football guy, feel free to brag. Where'd you go to school?
I went to Northwest Missouri State, kind of a smaller D2 school, Maryville, Missouri. But yeah, man, had a good time playing up there. Played for a couple of years. Good experience.
What position though?
I played quarterback.
Oh, okay. Come on, man. You got to brag about that. You quarterback. So it says it right in your LinkedIn, entrepreneurial spirit. It takes a different kind of brain to be a quarterback. So it looks like you were born with it, not trained.
Well, I guess you could say that, man. But did a lot of backup work. Don't claim to be the starter ever, but had a good experience nonetheless, man. It was a lot of fun up there.
No, that's awesome. So you graduate school. You decide to did you go to school for business? I'm assuming.
I didn't originally. It ended up turning into that. Just kind of shifted gears about halfway through. Ended up going down the business path. Always wanted to be, kind of an entrepreneur, business owner. Always kind of had that drive, that ambition. Kind of always had that entrepreneurial spirit, so to say. And when I got done with school, man, honestly, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I actually kind of kicked around a handful of ideas. Knew I didn't want to go to the corporate route. So like I said before, kind of went down the real estate path like a lot of folks do. Did that for a few years and realized, it wasn't what I wanted to do long term. And then had some good introductions, and it's kind of a friend of a friend. Actually, that's when they kind of got me involved in the freight industry back in well over a decade ago now, and it's just been off to the races ever since. It's the only thing that's kind of held my attention and really kind of consumed what I've done professionally for the last decade plus. So,
no, that's awesome. That's what, yeah. Once you get a taste of like freight and logistics, it's kind of hard to leave. So where'd you get your startup? What was your first gig? Yeah.
So I started with Universal Truckload, big outfit out of Michigan. Really, I started out just dispatching company trucks, asset trucks, flatbed, mostly flatbed, a little bit of dry van work, but worked with them on their asset side. Had a couple hundred drivers that I worked with over that couple year span. And that's how I kind of learned the industry, was just working with drivers, working, on the day to day, filling trucks and moving guys from A to B, and really just kind of learned the industry for a few years. Very appreciative of that. I learned a lot, made a lot of really good connections and relationships. I think I learned a lot of what the drivers have to deal with, and the pros and the cons of all that. And then, kind of shifted gears, got out of that and started up working with and helping run a brokerage, just a straight 3PL brokerage. Did that for a long time as well. And then, kind of shifted into the agency model, if you will, from the broker. I said, man, kind of shifted gears, wanted to get more on the, not the tech side, so to say, but wanted to kind of get out of the brokerage game and get into more of a model that can really be helpful for all pieces of the industry. The brokers, the carriers, and the shippers, and not just one. So,
no, that's awesome. I actually, that career path is interesting because, you talk to a lot of drivers, especially owner operators, and, there's always this disdain for brokers in a lot of ways, especially recently. And, they'll say, before somebody should be a broker, they should drive the truck. They should know what it takes. But the thing is, I mean, the truth is, that's kind of a false hope to wish that, because you shouldn't, there's like, people think that way militarily. They're like, oh, you should be enlisted before you be an officer, and in some ways that makes sense. But like in the logistics world, I actually agree with the way you did it. With you first worked in dispatching with trucks, which got you as close as you could to getting behind the wheel and truly getting that empathetic sense of the backbone of the transportation industry from that point, which probably trained you, and I would say probably made you better equipped to enter the brokerage world, because at that point you had skin in the game. You knew the skin in the game. You weren't going into it with a pure sales mindset. So that's it. Yeah.
Man. Yeah. And I'll say this too, man, just to add to that, like, I actually really appreciate and value the several years that I was working directly with the drivers, because honestly, like, it opened my eyes a little bit. And I think most people, just the general public, I think most people don't really understand or really recognize let's call it what it is, the crap that a lot of drivers have to go through on the day to day. And, there's a lot of challenges out there on the road. We all know what they are, being away from family for long periods of time, having to deal with the, weather conditions and economic conditions. And I mean, there's so many, the list goes on and on and on. Bad rates. I mean, high cost of operations. I mean, the list goes on. But, I really appreciate the fact that I have that background, and have spoke to probably thousands of drivers over the years at this point, because I think I do bring a little bit of a better perspective to the table. And like you said, when I entered into the brokerage game, I had that perspective on both sides. So I knew the driver, the trucking side, but then whenever I kind of went after the shipper and kind of the more of the customer facing side, I could relate both ways. So I kind of understood the game holistically and not just one part of it. And I think that really kind of gave me a little bit of an edge up. And that's, looking back on it, I think that's why I did very well, succeeded at a really high level on the brokerage side too. So.
Yeah. And I'd almost go as far to say, with what you've got going on that we're about to discuss with Freight Validate, because I've never heard of anybody who's become a freight broker most people become brokers, essentially, that their career path, they start at large brokerages where they have some high churn and burn, like at the large ones, like, whether it be CH Robinson or TQL, wherever they may go. And I understand that, but I don't think anybody who's a broker, I don't see them going to work for a motor carrier as a dispatcher, or going to work for a motor carrier in their safety department or HR.
You still there?
Yeah, I'm here. My Siri kicked on. So for some reason, the Siri on this computer kicked on, and it kicked out my sound. Where did I leave off?
You were just mentioning that likely most brokers are not going to go work for a motor carrier. It's usually the opposite, but most brokers don't go down that path.
Yeah, like a broker's never going to be like, oh, you know what? I don't really like this job. I'm going to go get a job with a motor carrier. Like normally, I feel like they'd be either turned off by the industry, or they'd bail. But like when you become a dispatch, when you work for a carrier, I think that can skyrocket you to other parts of the industry. You can either learn to be a mechanic, work for safety, get your CDL work. There's a lot of different, it's not just, and I had talked about this in Kansas City when I went to that summit, is a lot of people think that when you get into transportation, you have to like pick one career and stick with that. Like, sometimes, and I talked about this with Jamie Hagan as well from Hellbent Express of, hey, yeah, about how drivers are more than just drivers. You can always get out of the truck. You can come and do this job for a certain amount of years and then go back to it. Like that's what's, I think, the most beautiful part about the supply chain. But your career path, especially, I think you don't go this route. You might not be where you're at now. If you started out at brokerage, you might have stuck with building your own brokerage because you've got the spirit for it. You got the connections. You've definitely got the high speed mentality and attitude. You could have just stuck with the brokerage things, but now, since you've discovered, kind of full, 360 of the industry, now you've moved on to something that is going to really, really help change the game in the industry.
Yeah, we absolutely think it's going to. With Freight Validate, kind of give you a little bit of backstory on it. I think it'll help set up the rest of this conversation, but. Just to give a little context, Freight Validate was actually the original idea, and kind of the concept was actually just birthed about 5 or 6 months ago. A gentleman by the name of Dale Prax, a guy who I've been introduced to and had the pleasure to really get to know and really become really fond of, started this idea just about 5 or 6 months ago. And it was with the idea of, and let me say this, Dale has over 30 years of experience in the freight industry. So he doesn't come from, any other background other than he knows the industry, the ins and the outs, been incredibly successful in the industry. In my opinion, he's kind of one of the pillars, one of the good guys, one of the pillars in this industry, and has been for a long time. But a handful of months ago, he started the idea after talking to, some different folks, both brokers and carriers. He started the idea of Freight Validate with the idea that we want to build something that's going to unite the industry. It's not going to push one category over here further. It's not going to divide. It's not going to be. It's not going to further divide, because it already is. It's not going to further divide the industry. So brokers, carriers, and shippers in mind, he created the idea of Freight Validate to help fight double brokering, freight fraud, identity theft, and some of the other major issues that's been going on for the last handful of years. And that was a handful of months ago. He built out just a little website to kind of start it. And since then, I've came on board with them. Really excited about that. But we've done beta testing over the last 3 to 4 months, and we've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of both carriers and brokers sign up, put it through its paces, and for us, we've just seen just an unbelievable amount of support. We've seen an unbelievable amount of interest in what we're getting ready to launch, and the beta testing has gone really, really well. Not only can a company, broker, or carrier see if they are validated, but when we launch here in just under 2 weeks, they're going to be able to see a whole lot more than that. And so, again, it was kind of an idea. it's really grown and scaled. And then like we said, man, here in about 2 weeks, we're going to be launching Freight Validate 2.0 and really take it to market, really launch it to the public. And again, it's a way for companies, not just brokers, by the way, but carriers alike. And we have a shipper piece coming down the line, but for brokers and carriers alike to be able to go in and see if a company that they're going to be doing business with is validated. And let me say this too: what we mean by validated is factual information, not opinions, not subjective, rhetoric, not algorithms that are putting out, well, maybe this ranks higher than this because it's my opinion on what might, we're not giving scorecards to brokers or carriers saying, you might be okay, you're kind of medium grade, okay, you're not great. We're not doing that. We're just saying, here are the facts. We're pushing out the facts, not opinions. This is a validated carrier or broker. This is not. And it's just that simple. There's just been too much gray area in the industry for a long time. As long as I've been around, there's just been too much gray area. There needs to be some yes or no. There needs to be some right or wrong. There needs to be some validated or not. And so that's what we're really, really excited about, man. We're doing some different tech pieces we can talk about here in a minute, but we're doing some things very different than some of the other players in the game right now. And I think it's going to be a massive success for both carriers and brokers.
No, this does sound interesting, and so I know what I'm talking about, so that way we get the good story out there, because people have issues. Carriers have issues with things like Carrier 411, which seems to be, I guess you could say a subjective model.
Yep.
But for the most part, so people have problems with that. This opens it up for both sides of the industry. What does the validation process look like? So say I'm Lombard Trucking. I own 5 trucks. I'm interested. I'm listening to this podcast. I hear this. What does the validation process look like?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we want to make this as seamless and smooth as possible. Excuse me. on the validation process, whether it be a broker or a carrier, right? So in your example, whether it's a broker or carrier, all they do is go to freightvalidate.com. They follow the few simple steps, and we have 3 different categories of validation, right? And without going into every single detail about all of them, it really, just to put it simply, is the first category starts with facial recognition. So we basically have somebody take a picture of the front and the back of their license. They take a quick selfie. Our technology, which we can go into here in a little bit, basically recognizes, is that the same person or not? Okay, pretty simple. I actually have a pretty interesting, kind of a funny story with that. I had to rent a car down in Florida. Went down to Florida, vacation with the family. Even just to rent a car, I actually had to do that exact same process. Front and back of license, selfie. You need to know who you're doing business with. And unfortunately, in today's world, just saying, hey, I'm Nathaniel, or hey, I'm Mike, doesn't really do it anymore, right? So you got to know who you're doing business with. So that's kind of step 1. Step 2 is really validating the criteria on the business itself. So our technology goes through about a little over 50 different data points on validating, does the company actually line up? Is the owner of this company the actual owner of this company? X, Y, and Z. There's a little over 50 different data points that we touch on and make sure everything is actually accurate, right? We do pull data from the FMCSA. We pull data from about a dozen different sources, okay? So it's not just one, because you can lie on your application. You can do different things. So we pull a lot of different data from different sources, okay? And then the last piece is just validating the actual person, their background. Are they who they say they are, like the first piece I mentioned, but are they in bankruptcy? Have they ever had any money laundering type issues? Some different things like that as far as personal background as well. And then if you go through that process and you check all the boxes and you line up and everything matches, you get a green check mark. You're validated. And on a daily basis, our system and our platform is monitoring that. So if there's changes to a company, if there's changes to something that becomes an issue and is not compliant and is not legal, you don't stay validated forever. And our system tracks that and follows that on a daily basis. We're checking for both brokers and carriers, so it can be true, real time, up to date, accurate, factual data.
No, that's awesome. That actually leads me right into this. You answered one of my questions, which was, how do you maintain your verified status? So or validated status. So you can't just prop yourself up, get the check mark, and then you're crystal clear. You need to continue to be a business operating with integrity to keep your validation. Now, what I'm worried about is, because I'm looking, you want carriers and brokers to sign up. Now, is Freight Validate actively working? Because people aren't necessarily you're not creating a load board. So my question is basically, via the DAT, Truck Smarter, Truck Stop, are you working with any load boards so that way there's a Freight Validate that shows up on these load boards? Like if I'm browsing a load board, I can see, this brokerage, they're validated.
Yeah, great question. And the simple answer is yes. And here in just a couple of weeks, when we officially launch, there'll be some massive rollouts, some massive partnerships announced. But yeah, whether it be a load board, whether it be a factoring company, whether it be an insurance company, a shipper, I mean, you name it, just about every piece of the industry, it may not happen day one, but over a little bit of time here, you're going to start to see that green check mark that says Freight Validated a lot of different places. And so to your point, whether it be a load board or a brokerage, if they have that green check mark that says Freight Validated, a carrier should have utmost confidence in that they've gone through a pretty extensive validation process. That's a good company that I can work with and I can trust. And that's actually one of the things I was going to mention at some point here. Probably good timing now is when a carrier wants to do business with a broker, they see loads out there, they want to do business with that broker. They should have confidence that they're doing business with a good company. Now, the problem is that carriers and brokers alike have had just a bad reputation over the years. I mean, there's, over the last probably 10 to 15 years, it's not gotten really better. And in fact, in a lot of ways, it's kind of gotten worse. I don't want to do business with them because I feel like I'm going to get screwed. I feel like I'm going to either get double brokered, I'm not going to get paid on time, I'm going to have my loads, just all over the place, I'm going to get canceled last minute. I mean, you name it. There's been some stigma over both pieces of the industry. Now, what Freight Validated wants to do is come in and say, listen, we understand that because we've been in the game for a long time. Dale and I's combined experience is almost 50 years in the industry. Okay. So we kind of understand it pretty well, I think. But what we want to do is come in and say, listen, Mr. Carrier or Mr. Broker, hey, if you see that green check mark next to their company name or on the bottom of their email signature or on the load boards or wherever it may be, you can trust that that's going to be a good company because they've gone through such a vetting process, so to say, to get validated. And we don't see, and again, we've had a lot of discussions on this internally, but also with a lot of brokers and carriers, there should not be a reason why a good quality broker or carrier that is doing business legally, compliant, and doing things the right way, there should not be a reason why they would not want to get validated, because that's going to show to the other parts of the industry we're a good company. And unfortunately, in today's world, just saying, hey, I'm compliant and hey, I'm good, you can trust me, it just simply isn't enough. And we've been seeing that year over year over year. That's why we have some of these issues that we have today that we're addressing.
Yeah, we've covered it a lot on this show actually about how it's really this industry, like is not indifferent from any other business where it involves building relationships.
Yep.
And it's very difficult, but I'd say it's harder to build relationships in transportation because if you're a motor carrier, you're not doing business with people in your local community so much as if you're over the road. For the most part, most guys I know and most carriers and, myself, I was an independent contractor, booking loads off a load work, going all over the country. So a lot of times when it comes to sales and in other industries, whether you're selling a product, a lot of times the Like if I'm selling a product, a sales guy will send somebody to a business in a city and they establish a relationship with somebody face to face. This industry doesn't have face to face interactions to build those relationships. It's mainly done by phone, and it's been by phone, since the 80s. So it's become difficult to build relationships. I think that the people who succeeded post deregulation in the trucking world succeeded based off. I don't think, and I'm stealing this from my friends at Blue Ribbon Logistics. And motor carriers never failed because they took too many pull-ups to back into a dock. No trucking company failed because they grinded a gear. A motor carrier fails when they, if they're not, basically looking at their P&Ls and building relationships with people. So when it comes to, and I'm just, looking at this from I look at it, this thing from the opinion of the motor carrier. I think what's crazy is technology. I think over the past, because that's the thing, fraud was able to more easily enter the industry because the technology was the gateway with with load boards and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that the load boards are a bad thing. And I know that I kind of sometimes badmouth tech on the show sometimes.
Sure.
Definitely these apps like Truck Smarter and the load boards have definitely made it. I think it's definitely made the barrier to entry for people to start businesses a little bit better, just like it has for people who want to sell T-shirts or Please Advise hats. It's very easy now to manufacture a hat. What I think is the obstacle now with motor carriers, with Freight Validate, is carriers are going to say, I shouldn't have to prove myself in this. I've been driving for 30 years.
Yep.
And, now I have to pay for this. So I'm curious, you're kind of because you're taking it to market, and you don't have to give the inside baseball or any trade secrets, but I'm curious on your marketing strategy to carriers who are going to be like, man, I've been driving a truck for 30 years. I've got this much experience, and you're going to tell me I need to either pay or prove myself that to work with a broker who could be some 25-year-old. I'm just throwing this out there, and I'm just curious, because these are challenges I think you're going to face.
Sure.
And I'm just seeing how you're going to. Like I said, if I'm a carrier and I'm having a conversation with a guy like you, but that's just me. You and I have had multiple conversations. We've built a relationship, but now you're taking this to market, and you personally can't talk to every carrier on the phone and have the conversation. But so I'm just curious, seeing where you're going to market with it.
Yeah, for sure, man. And to your point, just from a moment ago, as far as technology, playing much more of a role over the last 5 to 10 years in the industry. I mean, you're exactly right. There's so many different pieces of this industry now. And, I'll just talk specifically about our piece of the industry when it comes to technology. There's really been just a few companies that have really kind of become well-known or really become players in the fraud double brokering piece over the last couple of years. But it's interesting, and truckstop.com actually just put out a stat here recently that over the last 5 years, freight fraud has actually grown over 400%. That's over the last I think it's 5 years until now. And so the way that we've looked at this, Freight Validate has looked at this is, okay, so some of these other players have been around for a year, 2 years, kind of in that range. But in the same time frame, freight fraud has actually grown close to 400%. So clearly there are some holes in those programs, and there's some missing pieces to some of that technology out there. And so we think at Freight Validate, we're going to really kind of fill the gap and really kind of do some things differently. That's going to, again, it's not going to be based on opinion or anything subjective. It's going to be based on facts. So we think the piece of the technology that we're bringing to the table, not only is it different, we think it's going to be a lot more effective in catching these fraudsters, these bad actors, so to say, right? So to your point, though, yeah, I can't talk to every driver out there. Wish I could. Be some really great conversation. Would love to. But at the end of the day, I think we're at a place in time, not only in this industry, but really just in life, I hate to say, where you do kind of have to prove yourself as one of the good guys. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. Everybody has their own opinions. But to your example of maybe the driver who's been around for 30 years, maybe he is one of the really good guys, has always been, above par, has really just done business and done the right things. He's going to probably say, why should I have to get validated? I've been one of the good guys, look at my track record. Problem with that is so's the fraudster. So's the bad actor who's going to say, well, I'm good too, right? Why should I have to prove myself? They're going to say the exact same thing. Why would they not? And the validation process is just going to prove one way or the other. The guys who are doing good business and are fully compliant and legal, they should have no objection. The guys who are not compliant and they know that they're doing bad business and not legal, they're probably not even going to try to sign up for Freight Validate because they know they're not going to make it through the process. So we're just coming from a very factual, hey, here's the law, here's the rules. Yes or no? Are you or aren't you? And that's where we're eliminating the gray area.
No, I'm inclined to agree with that, mainly because yes, I've met with several, and I've said his name on the show before, but Jamie Hagan from Hellbent Express. He's a phenomenal human being. Do I personally think he needs to prove his worth as a very honest and successful motor carrier? Absolutely not. His track record shows for it. But I'm pretty sure he'll be one of the first guys to validate himself because he's ready. And to your point, I think for the most part, I think it's probably a smaller number of carriers who are going to be like, I shouldn't have to do this. But I think for the most part, the guys who do care are at the point where they're just as fed up with fraud. I don't know how many Facebook groups I'm in where it's day in and day out. They've talked about loads being double brokered, brokers talking about their loads being double brokered. I mean, even myself, I got into an entire TikTok beef with somebody who's been double brokered. And to your point, it's actually hilarious that you mentioned that stat that the fraud has gone up by 400%, because when you look at it, when you take out the fact that it's fraud and you look at the 400% growth over 4 years, like these guys are winning. And just recently, actually, the gentleman who I was arguing with on TikTok, who willingly admitted he was a double broker, he just recently appeared on a show that has like 4 million subscribers on YouTube, talking about his success in the trucking industry. And I'm like, that's what 400% growth looks like over 4 years.
Well, it is, man, and it's funny you say that. I think I know who you're talking about, but it's it's everywhere, and our I guess you can say our unofficial tagline is, fraud starts with fraud, but it ends with Freight Validate. And, one of our missions is just to put ourselves and the industry, carriers and brokers, in a position where we can stop it before it really starts. Because when it doesn't matter if it's a broker or a carrier, if there's some bad actors out there, a lot of times they're fairly intelligent people. A lot of times they know what they're doing. A lot of times they know those little loopholes and those little nuances to be able to kind of get their foot in the door. And once their foot is in the door, truly, it makes it really hard to stop them. And it really does. It makes it, they kind of run rampant. And, a lot of times these bad actors have multiple MC numbers that they can just say, well, they're on to me on this one. They kind of caught me over here. So they just jump to the next, and they just kind of play the game that way. But, we really believe our technology and what we're doing, our platform is going to be able to stop these issues before they even really get a chance to start. And, to your point too, just from a moment ago's piece of the conversation is, when a carrier or a broker has that green check mark that says validated, and they've gone through the setup process and they've become a validated company, what's nice for them, and again, this isn't going to be day one, but over a little bit of time, that's going to start to really hold some weight in this industry. And when more and more people are validated, the good guys are going to start winning and the bad guys are going to start getting vetted out. And it's going to start showing some real weight, some real meaning in the industry. A broker who is about to book a load with a carrier, if that carrier has that green check mark, it's really simple to onboard that carrier, because their onboarding process, first of all, it's going to be more simple. It's going to save them time, because all of the back end work has already been done by Freight Validate. Sorry. And then likewise with a carrier, if a carrier, say they go on a load board, say they, find a load from a broker, and that broker has a green check mark, that carrier knows they're going to get paid on time. They know that they're going to be doing business with a good person. They know who they're going to be doing business with at that brokerage, not just some random account manager who they never know. They know who they're actually doing business with. And even take it a step further, what does a broker and a carrier really want? They want good shippers. They want good customers on that end as well. So a shipper is going to have a lot of down the line is going to have a lot of weight when it comes to seeing those green check marks as well. Because if a shipper views a broker or a carrier and sees that green check mark, they know they're doing business with a good company as well. So we, like I said at the beginning, we really are trying to take each piece, the broker, the shipper, and the carrier, and do something really, really positive for the industry that's going to unite and not continue to divide.
Yeah, I mentioned it before about building relationships. That's been the issue. Now that is I think you're starting to see through the weeds is the lack of communication. Is that the lack of communication between carriers and their drivers, lack of communication between drivers to carriers to the shippers to this. There are multiple middlemen, and none of them they're all kind of talking in circles to each other, and nobody's talking to each other. And this kind of takes care of that out. And this is me thinking out loud. Personally, I think if something like this is able to take off and really mainstream, I think you're looking at some. It could be temporary for a correction, but I think what it would do is almost kind of lift the spot market rates out, because if the fraudsters, if the bad guys want to essentially make money, they can't. They're still going to be committing fraud, but to the point at which they can't sell it for as cheap. And then the people who do have the green check, in order to defeat the scammers, because the scammers will be like, oh, this is for 10,000, and maybe they're ripping you off. But the green check people are going to be incentivized more of, okay, we need people to trust this green check. I need to make this green check worth what I'm paying for this. I think it could have a temporary lifting on rates, because the scammers would have to do something because obviously they want to keep committing fraud, because that's how they're making a living. And I think that they're going to have to do something. They're going to have to make a move, and other guys are going to have to make them. And then the good guys are going to have to make a move.
100%. We've really viewed this, what we think, from every angle. And that is absolutely true. We believe this is going to help every piece of the industry. And, we've seen fraud for the last several years really hurt every piece of the industry. And that's why we're so excited to launch here shortly, because we really do, whether it be by increasing spot market rates, whether it be increasing the integrity of a company, the integrity of a load board, the integrity of a factoring company, a TMS company. We really do believe this is going to help every piece of the industry. And I'll even say this too, talking about helping every piece of the industry, Freight Validate's actually going to be using our platform as well as an educational tool. And what I mean by that is, there are a few what some would consider to be kind of like minor issues or minor compliance issues, rather, that we're going to help brokers and carriers fix as well. I'll give you an example. I was just talking to a broker the other day. He's been in business 4 or 5 years now, so he's not brand new, but he's fairly new to the industry. He had no idea that legally you cannot do business out of a P.O. box. Legally, and call it ignorance, call it maybe just overlooking it, maybe just, call it whatever you want to call it. But legally, the law writes you have to have a primary place of business. Can't be a P.O. box. So Freight Validate, and that's just one example, there's dozens, but Freight Validate's going to use this as a tool as well to help carriers and brokers get compliant, get fully legal. Because in that scenario, he checked out all of the other 52 plus boxes that needed to be checked to be validated. That was literally the one thing that would cause him not to be validated. So we're going to use it as a tool to say, Mr. Carrier or Mr. Broker, listen, here's what the law says. Here's what the rules are. Now, let me show you how you can just go in and make a couple tweaks, fix the paperwork, and actually become fully compliant and fully legal. And then once that happens, once he does that and we get confirmation, he gets that green check mark. He's good to go. So that's just one example. There's a lot of examples we can give, but we're going to use it as an education tool to help people get compliant.
No, that's awesome. You've mentioned factoring companies too, because they play a role in this. And the gentleman I was discussing earlier, our favorite, Armenian double broker G-Face of his, right out of the most honest city in America, Glendale, California.
Oh yeah.
Like he in his video when he was showing off his Maybach, explained he even named his factoring company, and a lot of people on TikTok are saying, "Oh my God, he named the factoring company!
Yeah.
Like, what can he do?" And then come to find out, there were brokers I was seeing in comment section on LinkedIn saying, "Oh, this factoring company is well known to willingly do business with these people." So I'm curious what the freight validate looks like on the factoring side, because the factoring companies, in many ways, factoring, similar to being a broker, anybody can become a freight factoring company. You could set up a shell company out of Phoenix, Arizona, just like he does, or some shell city. And so I'm assuming for the factoring side, they must have some same sort of fiscal, validation that gets them a green check.
Well, yes. So to your point, so factoring companies, like we all know, like they have to have a process. They have to have an onboarding process. They have to have some sort of system that would let them know if ABC company, whether it's a broker or a carrier, they have to have something in place, a process and a system in place to let them know, is that a good company or not? Are they a legal company or not? What's my risk tolerance and what's my risk appetite going to be in helping this company out? And, some factoring companies do it a lot better than others. We all know this. Some are a little bit more strategic. Some are a little bit more lenient. I mean, you name it. But Freight Validate's going to be a resource for factoring companies just the same, because that factoring company, first of all, Freight Validate's going to make sure that's a good quality company to do business with. But at that point, that factoring company can use Freight Validate to validate who they're about to fund as far as factoring, right? So they can go in and check on an MC number, a broker or a carrier, and say this has a green check mark or it does not. And so when they have that opportunity to do it as well, then they can know, hey, that broker or that carrier checks all the boxes. They're a great company. They're legal. They're doing business the right way. They're fully compliant. So in all reality, for the factoring companies or even some of the insurance companies that we're partnering with, it's just another tool for them to say this company is validated or not, and then they can go through their process. They can do business like they want to do. Of course, it's just another way it's another layer of protection and another layer of confidence of who you're doing business with.
No, that's awesome. I got two more questions with you. Like I said, we could take as much time, but next up would be essentially, we were talking about shippers. I lost yes. Say somebody signed up for Validate. I'm talking you just mentioned you were working with insurance companies. So like liability reasons right here. So in a perfect world, everybody with the green check is a good guy. Now, you've mentioned that you can lose that green check status, obviously, and that could happen multiple different ways. But say, for example, besides losing the green check, say some mass amounts of, say there's like some massive amount of fraud, and essentially somebody gets ripped off. They're coming to you and saying, hey, I trusted these guys because of the green check. What are you going to do? What are you going to do for me? Because I just got screwed out of X amount of money and I might have to go bankrupt. Like, I'm talking hypotheticals here, but I mean, they're all true possibilities, because you mentioned insurance companies. So there's got to be, you are taking on a risk, no matter how you look at it, to become the kind of, I hate to use the term gatekeeper, but you are creating something of that is going to give people the trust and the comfort of who they're doing business with. So say that goes awry in any sort of way, what's the liability piece look like, I guess, for on your guys' end? What makes it worth it for you to where you're not going to get taken out or anything?
Yeah. So again, kind of to circle back to what was mentioned a little bit ago here is all we're doing is presenting the facts. All Freight Validate is doing is saying this company, they check all the boxes that they need to be a completely legal, 100% compliant company. That's it. You as a broker, you as a carrier, you as a shipper even can make the decision to use them or not. We can provide the data, the actual real time, daily, updated information. But you as a broker, carrier, shipper, at the end of the day, you can choose to use him or not. And if you do choose to use him, that's not to say the gentleman might not get in a wreck and your load is exploded all over the highway. That, I mean, and stuff like that happens in the industry. Like, that's not to say one way or that doesn't mean that he's a bad carrier just because he had an issue or something happened or what have you. And likewise with a broker, like we're doing all of the due diligence that, quite honestly, the FMCSA has not done and kept up to speed with and really done effectively. We're kind of taking that on as we're going to do the due diligence for a broker, carrier, or shipper just to present the full set of factual information. And at that point, yes, they would have, if they go through that process, they would have that green check mark. But at the end of the day, just because somebody does have that green check mark, it doesn't mean that there's not ever going to be an issue or ever be a situation. But the likelihood of there being situations is a whole lot less. And even to take a step further, the likelihood of there being fraud or illegal action is next to nothing. Because, I mean, I think you would agree. I think most people would agree. The good guys are typically the good guys. The bad guys are typically going to stay the bad guys. That's kind of black and white. There's really not a whole lot of gray area there. And so we're banking on the good guys to continue to do good business. But you know what? If they don't, they lose the green check mark anyway.
No, and yeah, that's very well put. At the end of the day, the ball is in your court, and true to what you just said, you're doing more than the FMCSA. So when it comes to liability, like to hold you completely liable and be like, oh my God, you gave this guy a green check. It's just, look, somebody's trying to, bad players are always going to slip through the cracks. Things are going to happen. Trucking happens. It's just, but at the end of the day, you're doing more than what than what's the standard set before us. So it's just, yeah, bad stuff's still going to happen, but no, that's well put. Last thing I want to go into, you've mentioned the technology you're using because, and why it's better. Now, when it comes to the driver's license thing, I had to do that too for something recently. I forget exactly what it was, where I had to take a picture of my license and then take a picture of myself. And I know that there's probably some libertarian purists on here who think it's, data mining, and maybe there's some, and maybe there's some truth to that, but I'm not here for that kind of conversation. I like the rental car method because it's crazy how you had to do it for a rental car, but truthfully speaking, you are, without a face-to-face connection with a business, taking a $20,000 piece of machinery and going God knows where with it. That company's trusting that you're not going to get hammered and go drag racing with it.
Right.
And so, and the freight world, because that's one thing I presented. I was like, is that a possible challenge? People are going to be like, oh, I got to send in this picture myself, but you are hauling freight probably that's worth, over six figures. Yep. So it makes sense. But I am curious to hear more about this tech that you're using, because this sounds like something that could succeed via blockchain technology. And I didn't know if that was something you're using or if you just wanted to go into more detail on it, because it seems like this is something where blockchain can kind of come in and help you with this.
Yeah, we're not at the moment. I'll say that we've got several pieces of pretty sophisticated technology that, again, here in a couple of weeks when we actually go live, will be announced and released. But the technology we're using, it's pretty intense. It's pretty high powered. It's extremely detailed and quality technology. And just to your point, as far as like the facial recognition piece, man, I could probably give you a dozen examples. I gave you the rental car example. It's pretty common practice these days. But I mean, just think about, like, if you go into a bank and you're wanting to, maybe you're wanting to get a loan for a business or personal or whatever, maybe you're trying to get a $500,000 loan for something. Is that bank just going to say, okay, sounds good, shake your hand, here's your $500,000? Of course they're not. They're a business. They've got to do their due diligence. They've got to make sure that that's a good business move. So what are they going to do? They're going to ask for your license. They're going to make sure it's actually you. They're going to make you fill out a registration or document process. They're going to make you go through and jump through a few hoops because they want to make sure that that's a solid business move for them and that they're doing business. They're giving money essentially to a good quality person that they can trust and have confidence in. We're doing the exact same thing, just at a little higher level. If a carrier is saying, Mr. Broker, I want to haul your freight, that is no different than the carrier saying, Mr. Broker, I want you to pay me tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on these loads that I'm moving for you. Well, shouldn't that carrier have all the confidence in the world that that broker is actually going to pay them and actually going to do good quality business with them? Same thing as a bank, and vice versa. A broker, shouldn't a broker say, Mr. Carrier, I'm giving you the trust. I'm giving you the business of what could be hundreds of thousands of dollars of not only freight on your truck, but also my reputation with my customer. I need to know, and I need to have the trust and confidence that you're a validated quality carrier, quality person that I'm going to be doing business with. So it's really no different than a lot of these things. And, I think over the last 3, 4, 5 years, the whole facial recognition piece, it's become much more common. It's been much more widely accepted. And again, whether we like it or not, it's one of the main tools to be able to identify if you're doing business with who you're actually trying to do business with. Because I can tell you that I'm somebody, and if I'm not actually that person, you would never know on the other end of that phone. And so this is just a way, one of the handful of ways that Freight Validate's going to really help this market out and really help this industry as a whole.
No, that's well said, man. And I couldn't agree with you more. To be perfectly honest, I would actually call what Freight Validate is the next logical step in the industry. I'd say what you've made is I'm trying to think of the term. It's in the natural line of progression of something going on. It's market exists, market creates problems, then the market creates solutions to those problems. And you're like, because essentially that's what's happened. The market has existed, problems then manifested during it. You worked in the middle of these problems, saw it, and now you're bringing to market something something that could very much well bridge this gap and fix it. And hopefully it can just, from here, it can keep the lid on the coffin, and it kind of keeps this problem from rising again. There's not ways to, because basically you're saying, the technology you're using, there's no way to circumnavigate this, because you can't just set up multiple profiles to get validated, because when you start seeing 5 profiles with the same driver's license, it's not going to fly.
Well, there's a lot more that we can talk about at a later time. And when we release here in a couple of weeks and go live, it'll very much be talked about on several different outlets. But the facial recognition piece is actually just one of our pieces, if you will, that's going to help this process. We probably have over a dozen different items and different tools that we use to help protect and put up barriers and put up some safeguards so that the bad guys don't get through it and validate it on the other end. It truly will be a game changer. And the last thing I'll say, and I know we're going to wrap up the call here, last thing I'll say is this. Is when we launch here in a couple weeks, not only have we already got a lot of really strong interest, a lot of really good feedback from our beta testers and, some of these companies that, have been, kind of working with us and we've been talking with over these last several months, but we're really excited to partner up with the good guys, the guys that we know are good, good in the business, have good reputations in the business, the guys that want to fight fraud just like we do. We're excited to partner up with them, and obviously they'll get validated if they're a carrier or a broker, but we're excited to do business with the good guys. And over time, the good guys are going to come out on top. We just believe that. We think the cream always rises to the top. And we think that Freight Validate is doing some stuff different in this piece of the industry that I think is going to be very noticeable from day one. And I think it's just going to have an incredibly positive impact on the industry right out of the gates. So
no, me too. Before I let you go, I just got two last quick things. Well, actually, more like one. But what's it going to look like cost wise for a carrier? You think, like if they're going to want to do this?
Yeah, so I'll answer that.
Yeah, if it's still being beta tested and you're tossing around with it, you don't have to.
No, we have our pricing down. It's already locked in. It's good to go, but that'll be released in 2 weeks. So here in a couple weeks, that'll be announced and released. Here's what I will tell you, though. There will be no reason why any carrier of any size, a one-man show, small fleet, medium-sized fleet, you have it. There will be no reason why they will not want to get validated if they're doing business the right way. If they want to be fully compliant, fully legal, the price will not be an issue. We're at a very, very reasonable price point for any size company, broker, or carrier.
Okay, awesome. No, that's good to know. I kind of I have a figure in my head that what I think it is, and I can't wait to see if I'm going to be spot on what it costs. But until then, you said you're launching in 2 weeks. So before we sign off, where can the people find you? Where can they keep up to date with this? Where if you have social media, Freight Validate has social media, where can people be in the know about all things that Nathaniel's doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So very heavy on LinkedIn. You can check me out on LinkedIn anytime. Just find Nathaniel Ebel. You can check out Freight Validate on LinkedIn as well. We're very heavy on all different areas there. Also, you might want to connect with and check out Dale Prax, Prax. Like I said, business partner, great guy, been around for a long, long time. We're excited what we're doing together. We will be launching our social media platforms via Twitter and Instagram here at the very beginning of this upcoming week. So you'll be able to find us there as well. But yeah, either way, you can always find us on LinkedIn and a couple other social media outlets here shortly.
Awesome. When you do get on Twitter, by the way, make sure you jump into, I know Kevin Rutherford hosts Twitter Spaces, but also every Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern, myself and the Please Advisory, we have a Twitter Spaces, the lost freight, we call it Freight Therapy, FR8 Therapy. I can't stress enough, like, especially if you're looking to reach people and talk freight, you jump in those Twitter Spaces and start introducing yourself, because there's guys, and definitely jump into Kevin Rutherford Spaces, because he would love to hear about what you've got going on. And there's a lot of owner operators that jump in there. Twitter's that we're making Freight Twitter the place to be. So I
awesome,
can't wait to have you there.
Yeah, we'll connect and we'll definitely do so. It'll be fun.
Awesome. Well, dude, I want to thank you again for coming on. This is a little bit of a long time coming. We'll have to get you after you launch. I'd like to get you back on too. We can kind of talk up a little bit of CDL Drivers Unlimited too, and talk about you getting involved with us over there and what we're doing, because I think that Freight Validate is going to be a tool that CDLDU members are going to be able to enjoy as well.
Yeah, man, great organization. Looking forward to talking more about that. And yeah, we'll jump back on the show here in a few weeks.
Absolutely, man. Thanks again for coming on, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good, man. Have a good day.
You too. All right, guys, that'll do it for episode 97. Thanks once again for tuning in. You know where to find me everywhere at Lombard Trucking. And with that, guys, we're back to the bench.